Hello, this video is an overview video of seed writing, the style of writing that we use at Buhler High School and throughout all of USD 313. The purpose of this video is simply to introduce you to what SEED stands for, the acronym, and the purpose behind each one of the steps for seed writing. It is just a basic video. There will be more in-depth videos later on for each individual style of writing. Now, before we get too far, SEED is simply an acronym. An acronym are some letters put together to help us to remember something. So things like NASA. NASA's an acronym. Things like FBI or radar. They've become words that we just use every day and not necessarily realize that they actually stand for something. SEED is the way that we help writing in a different style. Okay, now before you freak out or get upset or oh my gosh, I'm not a good writer or whatever, or I learned it a different way, SEED is the exact same way that you guys have been writing before or that you have ever been taught. It's just a little bit different wording that we use in order to help us remember all the different parts that need to go into writing, as well as a way for us to just be a little bit more streamlined across the district so everybody understands what we're talking about. Okay, so we're going to go through the different steps. We're going to talk about what the S, E, and D mean. We're going to give a definition and have an example of what they would look like. All right, so as you need, you can pause this video. You can stop it, go back, do what you need to do. I would also strongly suggest that you highlight either in a physical book if you have printed off a copy or online. In the video, I will be showing you how to highlight and make comments online, but you can be doing the same thing in person if you have a hard copy as well. I strongly suggest you do the highlightings because things in this video you might not completely remember as you go on 2 weeks, 3 months, 2 years down the road. Now, seed writing is something that you can use throughout the rest of your life. Whether you go to college or not, this is a style of writing that is something that will make you be a better writer. Whether you think you're a great writer now or you think you're terrible, this style of writing is going to help you to be better. Right? So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so you should have your seed writing packet open from Classroom. Right, first page here. We are actually going to scroll down. You have a table of contents. We're going to go to page 3. Right, this page that has this black SEED title on it. Okay, and this is where we're going to first start taking our notes. Okay, so the first note we're actually going to do is going to be the purpose of SEED. Okay, seed writing is for technical and academic writing. Right, so I'm going to make a note over here. I'm going to say not narratives and fiction. So if you're writing a story, do not use seed writing. If you're writing a story about your life, a narrative from your past when you were younger, don't use seed. This is for technical writing. This is for essays. This is for how-tos and things like that. Okay, so this is for academic writing, not your fiction and fun writing. Okay, journal entries, things like that. Okay, now as you can see over here, there are 5 styles of seed. This is really brief. We're going to go into more depth with each one of these. There will be a different video for each one of these, but I want you to at least have an idea of the different types of seed. Okay, so the very first one is clarification. Go ahead and highlight that one pink. To highlight, you click and drag over what you want highlighted, and you come up here to this highlighting tool at the top. And we're just going to give it a nice pink color highlight. Okay, clarification is the first style. And it answers questions, the question why, again, I'm going to do kind of a pink color, and how, right? So if you're reading a question and it asks why did Hamlet delay in avenging Claudius's murder, you know you're going to use clarification. So these are your key words, okay? Those are the key words, okay? And you see it by this right here, okay? The next one is enumeration. Right? Enumeration, I'm actually not going to highlight the whole thing. I am just going to highlight the NUM of NUM. And the reason I'm going to do that is because it makes me think of number. Okay? And so I'm actually going to put a comment over here. Think of number. All right? Enumeration is when you're listing or explaining multiple ideas, chronologically, steps, or how to, okay? That's kind of your key on that one is the how to. So I'm going to highlight that one too, okay? The how to. And you see it says right here, explain, right? You see explain or what are the steps? So you're looking for explain or steps, okay? Multiple ideas, things like that. The next one you have is definition, right? Definition is also one that can go with any of these others. So it's kind of a add-on to these others. It's not its own style, but what you're looking for is the word what. So we're going to highlight that one as well. What, okay? That's the first part for definition. Then you're going to have why or how is the other part that's going to fit with this. Right, so you see down here in the example says what is photosynthesis and why is it important. So not only are you defining photosynthesis, but then you're going to explain why. So if it's a why, this would be definition, clarification, because it's asking a why question. Right? If it said what is photosynthesis and explain the steps it uses, then you'd have definition and steps comes back up to enumeration. Okay? The next two usually go together, comparison and contrast. But we have found in writing that if you ask somebody to compare and contrast, they usually forget one or the other. So we've broken them into two paragraphs or two different styles. So comparison is just like what it sounds. We're going to highlight that one. It is showing similarities. So that's going to be the word that you want to make sure that you do. Now you can see it says in what ways are World War II and World War I alike. So your key word down here is alike. It's not the word similar, but it is alike. So you can see that there are some synonyms that you're going to have to be aware of, but you're looking for ways that they're going to show that they're similar. Now, the last type of paragraph is contrast. Okay, so if comparison is similarities, contrast is going to be differences. How are things different? So how do Democrats and Republicans differ? Okay, it might be explain the differences between. Okay. Now, these comparison and contrast can also be with definition. So you could say what is or what was World War I or World War II, and in what ways are they alike? So you'd have to define the wars. Same thing here. What is a Democrat and what is a Republican, and how do they differ? So you can have definition. It fits with all three of these. Okay. So I'm actually going to come up to definition, and I'm going to make a note off to the side. Okay. Okay, you'll never have it on its own. If it's just a definition, it's a short answer. Okay, it's not going to be a paragraph. But if it's a definition paragraph, it will be with any of these other four types. Okay, we're going to move on to the next section. So let's go to page 4. This is talking about how seed works, right? So with this, again, we're not going to go into every style yet. We're just going to go into what the different letters of the acronym SEED. Remember, that was our purpose. What does SEED stand for, and how does that work? Okay, so remember, that's our purpose. So we're going to go through each of these sections: statement, example, explanation, and deduction. And you're going to have some things to highlight, maybe some notes to add for each section. And this is just a quick reference page for just SEED in general. We'll get to the specifics later. So let's get started. The first one we're going to be talking about is the S in SEED. The S in SEED stands for statement. And I'm going to highlight that one in pink. And then I'm going to also be using some green just to kind of differentiate some ideas. Okay? So a statement is simply the topic sentence. You've heard topic sentence before. We are going to call it statement because it adds in a couple things. As you see with the dots here, with the bullets, there are 3 things that go in a statement, right? The very first one is you have to restate the prompt, and we're going to highlight that one in green. Okay? You have to restate the prompt. Now, not repeat it, paraphrase it, or turn the question into a statement, and we're going to see that here in just a second. So you want to make sure that you are adding that part in there. Why do you want to do that? Because when it comes down to writing your essay, let's say there are 10 prompts to pick from, you want your person, your audience, or your teacher to be able to understand exactly which prompt you are answering right away, that they don't have to wait 2 or 3 sentences in to figure out what it is you're even talking about. Let them know right away, okay? Next one, this is huge, okay? So you restate the prompt, and then you need to add because. All right, this because needs to be here because it's going to add your reasoning. So statements, you need to restate the prompt and answer the question, but you got to connect it in some way. Now, we need to make ourselves a note right here, though. There is no comma here, okay? Whenever you use because, there's no comma. Ever. In any writing, not just here, all right? The reason is because is the comma, right? It's one of those conjunctions that functions as a comma, right? It is the pause in the sentence. So there's no comma with because is the comma, okay? So never, ever, ever. If you had a teacher that's told you that before, throw it out, okay? No comma here, all right? So I'm going to put that comment there. And then finally, you need to answer it. This is a simple answer, okay? So answer the question. I'm going to highlight in green, but I'm also going to add a note over here. It is the simple short answer. It's not all of your research or anything like that. It's just the quick short, okay? So we've got an example prompt here, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit so we can see it a little bit better, okay? It says, why is Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare a tragic love story, all right? So the first thing we need to do, looking at statement, is you need to restate the prompt. You go in this order, okay? So restate the prompt. Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare is a tragic love story. So up here it asked why. So it had a question. You took it and made it into a statement. So you turn the question into a statement. Instead of saying, why is it? You just are stating a fact. It is a tragic love story. Then you need to add because. Take note that there is no comma, okay? No comma right there, so take note of that. Finally, you are going to answer the question, okay? How can you say that it's a tragic love story? How can you prove that it's a tragic love story? Well, because both the main characters die, or all of the main characters die. Something about death, because death is there, right? Tragic love, maybe put the main characters fall in love and die, okay? And then that gives you all of this right here, okay? So you've got your restate the prompt, you've got because, and then you've answered it. That's how a statement works. All right, let's move on to the first E in C. Notice there are 2 E's, so we're working with the first E. And that E is example. So again, we're going to highlight that in pink. Okay, the example. Now here's the big part with an example. Again, and this is why it doesn't work for fiction or anything like that, is you are writing an explanation and it needs to be cited directly or paraphrased from the text. Okay, so it needs to come from the text. So I'm going to highlight that in pink as well, from the text. Now I'm going to make a little comment here. Directly cited, this means it's word for word. Okay, it's word for word, from the text. Okay, word for word from the text. That's what directly cited means. Paraphrased means in your own words. Okay, so you're going to put the text in your own words. Now, why do you still need to have an example and paraphrase it, or why does it need to be directly cited? Well, that's kind of your choice, and will be explained a little bit more in depth later on when we do specific examples. But you need to know the difference between the two. Okay, so directly cited or paraphrased, but it's got to come from some sort of text. That text could be a book you're reading, that could be from notes you've taken in class, or a lecture you've heard from a teacher, things like that, or a website that you've looked up online, newspaper article, things like that. Okay, that's the text. So anything that's from written form. Okay, so the thing you're going to need to know is you have to use transitions. Now, the transition that we work with the most to begin with is, for example, that's the most common transition. But in this packet, there are pages of transitions that are broken down by style of seed, just lots of examples that you can use. So you don't have to stay with, for example, as you continue on. But right now, that's going to be the one that we use. So let's look at the example. We still have our statement here. Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare is a tragic love story because both main characters die. To set off that we are going to example, we need to use that transition. And a transition is something that basically tells your reader, hey, turn this way. It's road signs for your writing. Okay, so you have to have a transition. Also, take note that right after, for example, there's a comma there. You need to make sure that you have a comma after transitions. For example, comma. Okay, so make sure you put that there. Now, you need an example that comes from the text. Okay, now I'm not word for wording it, so I'm not directly citing it. I'm going to paraphrase an example. So, for example, Romeo takes poison he bought from an apothecary. Okay, now there's something that's not here that we will talk about later, but you need to have a citation. Okay, we call it a PI, a parenthetical citation. So we'll talk about this more, all right, but just make sure that you add that in and at least have it there because it's not going to be there on your document. Okay, so make sure you add just parentheses PI, and we'll talk more when we get into our full examples as well. Okay, but you just say, for example, okay, from the text. Moving on to the second E. Now this one is probably one of the most important steps in this entire bit of writing, but it's one that we found that a lot of people leave out. Okay? Before this, in the statement, you are simply kind of repeating what's already been given. In the example, you're repeating something from the text. Explanation, this is where you get to show that you really do truly know and understand what you're talking about. Okay? So we need to go through and highlight the explanation. We're going to make that pink. Okay? Explanation is commentary, inferences, or clarification of the example. Okay, so that's the one that we're going to highlight in pink is clarification of the example. This is where you clarify and make it so that you understand. Okay, comment, clarify, draw connection, something else that connects the example to the statement. This is huge. Okay, you've got to make sure that you connect whatever example you have back to your answer in the statement. If you don't make that connection, it will not make sense. Okay, the best thing is that you need to know about this is you're not summarizing the example. You're not paraphrasing your paraphrase. Okay, this is a do not do. Okay, most important, do not do. Okay, do not summarize the example. You want to explain it. Make the connection between sentence 1 and sentence 2. Okay, so it's going to show the existing connection. It might clarify why this is important, and you can literally say this is important because it leads the reader towards the next part. So let's look at an example here. Right? So again, we have our statement. Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare is a tragic love story because both main characters die. We have our example, our first E. Okay? For example, Romeo takes poison he bought from an apothecary. Now, we need to explain, we just have that he takes poison. It doesn't directly state back to why he dies, okay, or why both die, or why this makes it tragic, okay? So you need to explain a little bit more. And a lot of times this explanation becomes a because statement. It doesn't have to, but it does get used quite a bit. So, as it says, Romeo took the poison because he thought Juliet was dead and he wanted to spend eternity with her, not without her. So that's why we show that it was a love story. He was in love with this girl, Juliet. He thought she was dead, miscommunication. He took poison. There we go. All right. So we explained why he took the poison and why or how it caused him to die, okay, to show that it's a tragic love story. You've got to connect it back. This one is probably one of the harder parts to do as well. But the biggest thing that you can ask yourself when you're trying to figure out, okay, how do I write this? Okay, so we're going to add a little bit of note, and we're going to put it right here with this example, right? And you're going to, I'll scroll so you can see that better. Okay, ask why the example is important. Okay, the answer is your explanation. Okay, so ask yourself, why is this example important? Why did you tell me this example? Okay, and that helps sometimes for you to write your explanation sentence. All right, the last section that we're going to deal with is the C, the deduction. All right. So we're going to highlight that pink. Now this is also a part that's sometimes hard to do because you've been taught one way and now we're going to try and push you to go another way. If you don't get this step right away or it doesn't quite make sense, that's okay. That's understandable. So don't worry about that. Okay? The biggest thing to know is that it is basically your last final sentence. Okay? So it's the last final thought. The reason that this is important to know is because when you're writing paragraphs, you might have multiple examples. This might become a C, E, 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 D paragraph, and you have 3 examples with 3 explanations, right? Every example you give, you must have an explanation. Well, you've also got to have a final sentence. We used to call this a conclusion. The thing is we don't want you to conclude, all right? The conclusion sometimes gets to where you've been taught, and this is not wrong, but you've been taught to restate your first paragraph, restate your topic sentence to remind your reader. That's a great starting point. We're now pushing you to go further, okay? And that's the other part that you need to know is to go further, right? That's the important step here. Go further. All right, so what a deduction does is kind of helps everybody go through and figure out where the writer wants to go next. And there are 3 ways to do this. One of them is cause and effect. Because this happened, now this will happen. Okay? Because Romeo took poison, Juliet will kill herself. Plan of action, this is an action statement. Right? This would be a call to action. This would be, now that you know this information about Romeo and Juliet killing themselves, we need to stand up against teen suicide. Okay, so a call to action. There's also a place that you can do a logical prediction. Now, logical predictions are kind of fun to do because you get to read about this and then say, okay, based on what I've just said, here's where I think we're going. So because Romeo and Juliet killed themselves, my prediction is that they will change the lives of everyone around them, and suicide will no longer be an issue, or it will be something that people can talk about to save more lives. Okay, what do you think is going to happen? Based off of what you said, what's your prediction? Okay, it hasn't happened. The difference between logical prediction and cause and effect is cause and effect already happened. Here was the cause, here was the effect. Logical prediction, you have the cause. What do you think is going to happen? Okay, now this one you have to be, the key part is logical. Okay, no aliens unless you're reading about something with aliens. All right, Romeo and Juliet, no aliens. You should not have, because Romeo and Juliet killed themselves, aliens are going to come and attack the world. That's not logical. Okay, so it's got to be a logical prediction based on your examples. Right, so there's 3 different ways that you can do this. Okay, so let's look at the example. Again, we've got our statement here. Okay, that they are a tragic love story because both main characters die. You have your for example to tell your reader, hey, follow me to this road sign. We then explain why he took the poison and why it makes it tragic. And then we finish with this transition. Now, there are 2 different transitions that you can use, and we're going to add them in a comment. Okay, so as a result is 1. Okay, now it's as a result of, and there's something more. Or you can put therefore. Now, if you notice, as a result, there's no comma here, but therefore, there is a comma. Okay, therefore, comma goes immediately. As a result, you've got to see as a result of what. So if you look back at the example, I'm going to hit comment. If you look back at my example, here is the comma. It's as a result of Romeo killing himself, comma. Okay, so that's where the comma comes in here. So as a result doesn't have a comma, and we'll talk about that more when we go into depth with the other styles. But as a result of Romeo killing himself, because remember, back to my examples, when Juliet woke up for the same reasons, she killed herself. So this one was cause and effect. Because this happened, okay? So there's kind of that. And it ties back to this being tragic, okay? Because they both died. We're still going on this idea that the characters died, talking about both main characters. They killed themselves. There we go. So as you can see, this is not a real long paragraph, but it is a well-written paragraph. And that's what we're trying to focus on, is length doesn't mean that it's better. Good writing means that it's better. So as you can see, this is only 4 sentences long, but it's so much better to answer this question in 4 very good sentences than 10 sentences that kind of go off on rabbit trails or don't really follow any order or are not organized. So that's what SEED does, is help you organize and give you a logical order of events, logical way to put your writing, and some very specific things to make sure you have in here in order to make your writing better. If there are any questions after watching this video, please make sure that you ask either someone in the ELA department or your teacher to make sure that you know what it is that you need to get cleared up for seed writing in order for it to make more sense.